Hello and welcome to this e-session for you and industry students on preparing for your placement search. My name's Matt Jones, one of the careers advisors here at York St John University. Now, a bit of a disclaimer before we get started. This session is being recorded live, so do expect some ers and ums from me throughout, but you are very welcome and thank you so much for listening today. So, by the end of today's e-session, you should be able to outline the definition and potential benefits of an industrial placement. Now, when we talk about industrial placement, we mean year in industry placement. There are lots of different guises used by different individuals. So employers might give it one name, lecturers might give it another, university staff might give it another. So ultimately, when we talk about industrial placements, we're talking about year in industry placements, industrial placements, sandwich year placements, and long-term internships for 9 to 12 months. You should also be able to identify and evidence your relevant key skills and strengths, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. And then finally, using these key skills and strengths, you should be able to produce your first draft of an undergraduate level CV. Now, the session today will focus on what you can do this summer to get a head start on searching for your placement next year. What I would say is use the time that you've got to prepare because it can make a huge difference when you come round to start applying for your placements next year. So first things first, what is a year in industry? So you've probably heard my colleague Fran talk about what a year in industry placement is, but in short, it's your opportunity to gain 9 to 12 months experience within a particular sector or industry and as part of your degree programme. So you'll graduate with let's say you're studying BA Business Management. You would graduate with BA Business Management with a year in industry as part of your degree title. You'll be paid for your work. So usually opportunities are paid between 15 and 20,000 per annum. Obviously that's prorated if you only do 9 months, for example. And basically it's your opportunity to try out or road test your career ideas for the future. So as a careers advisor, I'm always talking to students about, so you've got this great idea for a career path or maybe a role that you want to engage with in the future, but have you got any experience and have you tried it out? Because actually, once we try it, it could be the best thing we've ever done. And this is an area you want to investigate further in the future. But equally, you could try it out and think, actually, it's not what I thought it was, and therefore I'm going to keep continuing to research what other roles exist. So as a careers advisor, what I'm aiming to help you with is to be confident about making some really robust career decisions for the future. But to do that, we must use our own experiences and the opportunities we engage with to help us make those decisions. So this opportunity will help you to try out or road test career ideas for the future. You can also grow your professional network. So they say that you have to network to get work, which is a bit of a cliche and a bit of a cheesy sort of sentence, but it's true. It's all about the people you know in the industry and how you can build those relationships with those individuals. You can also work on developing your graduate skill set, so you don't turn up to university as a blank slate. You've already got a skill set that you developed through part-time work or things that you did at school and at college, but this is about developing a skill set that is relevant to your career in the future and the kind of skills that graduate employers are looking for, but we'll come on to this a little bit later. And then finally, you can deepen your knowledge of how academic theory that you're learning day to day as part of your course can be applied to a real life environment and a real life context. And that can be really useful. Research suggests that students who have completed a year in industry placement have an academic uplift. So they work and achieve better grades in their final year because they can understand how what they've learned as part of their course can be applied to a real life context. So what I'd urge you to do over the summer, have a really good think about what you want to gain in particular from your year in industry placement. Because I suppose if we don't set ourselves goals and don't have a clear idea of what we want to achieve, we don't know if we've been successful or not. So at the start of your second year, I'll be speaking to you probably one-on-one, or at least part of a group as part of your preparation for year in industry. So we'll discuss what you want to gain in particular from this experience. So it'll be really helpful for me as we're talking if you can have a think about what you'd like to gain from any of the points on the last slide or your own thoughts as well. So over the summer, it's a really good opportunity for you to sort of research and investigate any ideas or areas of interest that you have. There are a few places that you can look. So generally for opportunities that might exist. These are for websites or apps that you could engage with. So that is Rate My Placement, Prospects, Placer, or Debut. These are platforms that you will more than likely use in your second year to source your industrial placement, but there's no reason why you can't go on there over the summer to see what opportunities there are for this year for students who are currently looking for their placement, just to get an idea of what is available. And also have a think about what kind of companies you'd like to work for as well. Is it a large company? Is it a small company? Think about your degree subject and where you would like to link that in with the sectors that are available. So there are large schemes such as L'Oreal, Microsoft, The Body Shop. We've got technical and business placements with IBM. And there are some really exciting ones as well with Disney and Warner Brothers. So there are lots of opportunities for everybody. It's just about seeking them out and figuring out what you want from this experience as well. Now, I promise that I'm not going to talk careers theory to you too much today. However, this is called the DOTS model. We use this a lot in careers work, and this is the process for career development. So whenever we want to make a change or take steps forward with our career or our career development, this is a model that we can use to help us with the process. So it's a case of firstly reflecting on your current position, and this is the area we're going to focus on today and within this session. So we're going to look at your skills, your strengths, your wants and needs from placement year, and these will all form part of yourself and your current position as a first year. Now, as we come back in your second year, we will start to look more at opportunities and research and explore those opportunities that are available to us. But as I've said in the last slide, there's no reason why you can't start researching those opportunities right now. We'll start to make some decisions in your second year about what we'd like to apply for and set ourselves some goals about achieving those. And then finally, the transition of you seeking out and securing an industrial placement for your third year. So as I say, this tool is fantastic to get you start thinking about the career development in the future. But as I say, today's session will focus purely on self. So the first thing I'd like to ask you is, what do you think a skill is? Take a few seconds now to think about how you would define a skill. Often when I speak to students in session or in a one-to-one and I ask them what they think a skill is, they often say things like something that you can do, something that you can do better than anybody else, or perhaps something that you've learned to do. So by that logic, is juggling a skill? Because that might be something we can do, something that we have learned to do, and something that we're better than anybody else at. I certainly can't juggle, so there'll be other people out there who are better jugglers than me. Equally, tossing a pancake or flipping a pancake is a skill by that same logic, but it's not necessarily valued by an employer, of course, because that's something we do maybe once or twice a year. Again, something that I think is definitely a skill and something that I haven't got down yet is the ability to take a good selfie. So these are all skills by the logic that we started with the what is a skill question. But actually, how does that fit in with your thoughts? And finally, if you, for example, in your friendship group, you are the person that all your friends go to when they have problems or they need advice or they want support with anything, that could also be viewed as a skill. And this is the particular skill we're going to focus on at the moment. So if this is you, it could be said that you have these skills. So for example, if you are that person in your friendship group, it could be said that you are a great listener because People are coming to you for you to listen to their problems. Obviously, you must have good problem solving skills for them to come to you in the first place. They must know that you can help them solve that problem. You must be a good critical thinker because you can think about things from different points of view. And finally, you must be approachable and you must be a good communicator for them to approach you in the first place. Now, you might be sitting here thinking, this is me. I am that person my friends go to or my family go to when there is a problem. How is that related to careers? Well, those skills in particular will serve you fantastically as an HR officer or a social worker. And these kinds of skills are on the person specifications of these kinds of roles. Now, if you do fit into that category of being an agony aunt, but don't want to be an HR officer or a social worker, that's absolutely fine. But it's a really good opportunity for you to reflect on yourself and the skills that you have and how you would articulate those with an application to an employer. My next question is, what is the difference then between a skill and a strength? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds just to think about what you would say for that answer. So to demonstrate what the difference is between the two, between a skill and a strength, I'd like you to try out the following activity. What I would like you to do is find somebody in your house or somebody that you regularly engage with face to face, and I'd like you to talk about something with them or ask them to talk about something to you that they love doing for 30 seconds. Okay? What I'd like you to do is make some notes carefully on your observations of what they look like and what they sound like. And then what I'd like you to do is then swap over and repeat with the other person. So feel free to pause the video while you do this, and don't forget to carefully observe and take notes about what you see. So what you may have seen is somebody very engaged, they're smiling, they're using their hands a lot in terms of expressing themselves, they get really excited, their eyes light up, they look very engaged, they're really interested and excited to talk about the things that they love. So, in contrast, with that same person, could you do the same activity, but get them to talk about something that they find draining for 30 seconds? And again, take notes about your observations and then swap over and get them to do the same with you. And I'll give you a couple of seconds to pause the video and to do that with them. Okay, so what you may have observed here is a difference in their engagement. They may be looking and feeling a little bit more down or stressed, or their demeanour may have changed. They're not as excited. The tone of their voice may have dropped a little, so they're not as excited and engaging. Equally, they could be still enthusiastic, but in a different way to really relive and talk about the things that they really dislike and find draining. And it's really important to know this because strengths are formed of three distinct areas. One, performance, things we do well. Two, energy, things that give us that feel-good factor and something that we really enjoy doing or talking about. And three, use, is something that we do a lot. So if you're thinking what the difference is between of a skill and a strength, strengths are much more than skills because they give us not only things that we can do well, but we also feel really energized by that individual skill or thing that we're doing. And then finally, it's something that we use a lot and have developed a great aptitude of carrying out. Examples of this could be you are entrepreneurial or curious, or you enjoy working under pressure, that you're a creative person or a strategic thinker. If, for example, through your work experience or through any of your experiences through university and prior to university, you might really enjoy the strategy of things. You've done it a lot because you may have had a part-time job or experience that have required strategy. You might feel energized by putting a strategy together or um, seeing your strategy be applied to an example. And again, it's something that you're great at. I think some people are definitely more strategic thinkers than others. So think about what your strengths are, because these will be the key differences as part of the recruitment process to set you apart from other people. We've all got our own skill sets, but there may be a lot of crossover between those skill sets across applicants for the same positions. What I would say is think about your strengths and how you can use these strengths to set you apart from other candidates as part of the process. So, once you've thought about your skills and your strengths, where would you find which skills or strengths are required? Well, when you're applying for a job, any job, usually there is a job description and a person specification. Now, the difference between the two, this is a job description, so it would outline what the employer would be expecting you to do or what you could expect to do as part of that role. So things, this is a role for a LaunchPad ambassador, so somebody who works for a student who works for the careers team here at York St John University within my department. So those students can expect to attend relevant training and meetings where possible. They must sort of stay in touch with the senior careers advisor by email, telephone, and in person, and they will be assisting on a range of outreach activities to raise student awareness of employability services. So, very much in terms of what the responsibilities and duties are and what the person can expect to do as part of that role. The person specification is slightly different. So this is what the employer is looking for in terms of qualities, competencies and skills required to do a particular role. So if you look at this list here, we've got things like able to manage a workload and conflicts in priorities, understanding of the UK higher education system, experience of working in a customer-facing role, and ability to work well in a team environment. Now, as we can see, if we look to the second column, when you've got lots of E's and D's, E stands for essential. So this criteria, the employer has identified as crucial and essential for this particular role. The D stands for desirable, which means it would be nice to have, but isn't necessarily essential. So, for example, if you meet the majority of the E's and you can meet some of the desirable qualities as well, that can only set your application apart from the other people that would be applying. In the next column, you can also see some A's and I's. Now, A's stand for application and I's stand for interview. Now, that gives you an indication of where you're going to be challenged or tested on these particular skills or competencies or knowledges. So, for example, all those with I within the column, more than likely it's going to be a question on those areas within the interview, or an activity that you could engage with as part of the job interview could be testing you against these skills or competencies. So I usually refer to the person specification as the God, I can't talk. The person specification as the answer sheet before the test. So this really is the crucial part of knowing exactly what is expected from a candidate and how you can use the information in the person specification when writing your cover letter or supporting statement to really align your experience with these competencies. Now, the next activity I'd like you to do, thinking about the person specification and the job description that we've just looked at, what I'd like you to do is select one of these job titles. So secondary school teacher, marketing officer, youth worker, and careers advisor. And what I would like you to do is to think about what skills might be in the person specification for these roles, aka what skills are required for individuals who are working within these roles and why. So I'd like you to give you the opportunity to pause the video for about 10 minutes, pick one of these job titles and make a list of the skills that you think are required and could be present within the person specification. Now, The reason that this activity is so useful as part of this process is because we need to get a really good understanding of the skills required for the jobs or the roles we are interested in applying for in the future. So what I've done, hopefully you've now completed that. You've selected one of these job roles and made a list of the skills. Now, what I did, I looked on the Prospects website. On the Prospects website, there are about 500 job profiles of roles that exist, and it breaks them down in terms of what the role is, what salary you can expect, what working hours you can expect, what qualifications you will need to work in that role, and then finally, what skills are required from individuals working in that sector or in that role. So I've taken the list from Prospect, and here are a few examples. So for a secondary school teacher, for example, good listening skills, capacity to learn quickly, understanding of the needs and feelings of children, and a good sense of humour and the ability to keep things in perspective. For a marketing officer, got strong interpersonal skills, customer facing skills. The third one's really important, so that's commercial awareness and business acumen. So knowing what other organisations are doing in terms of your competitors and how you can capitalise on that information within the marketing campaigns that you work on as part of your role as a marketing officer. The next one is youth worker, so excellent interpersonal skills, ability to establish good relationships with young people, patience, tolerance, flexibility, all really key skills within these roles. And then finally, a careers advisor, so the ability to motivate and build a rapport with a range of people, flexibility and adaptability, empathetic and non-judgmental approach to work. So again, these are the types of specific skills for that role. And as you can see, there are some similarities in terms of transferable skills across these particular roles, but there are distinct differences. And it's about you as a student and as a placement year student to capitalize on this information. So do your research into the roles that you're thinking about applying for in the future and get a really good idea about what skills are required for those roles and how you currently fit in to those skill sets. So what skills do you currently have and how close are you to fulfilling all of the skills that are required for those particular roles? One way you can do this is by completing a skills audit. Now, a skills audit is essentially a process for measuring and recording the skills of an individual or of a group. Now, we'll complete a skills audit as part of this session today, and as we move forward through second year and third year, you'll probably complete multiple skills audits because as we go through and we gain more experience and we do a placement year and we do a summer internship or part-time jobs, we're developing skills as we're going. Um, so by doing regular skills audits, we can keep track on what skills we're developing and how we can achieve those skills in terms of developing them in the future and be really, really specific about the skills we want to develop. So what are those skills measured against? Well, it depends on the role that you're applying for. So some roles might expect you to be socially responsible and can see the bigger picture. Some roles might expect you to be independent or self-aware. Some roles might require digital literacy or being confident and effective communicators. Some roles might require you to be curious minded or research orientated. And finally, some roles in particular, let's say marketing, uh, you must be adaptable and able to work in a high pressure environment. So again, through your research, you should, for example, I'll provide you a general skills audit for you to start off with, but that's certainly nothing stopping you from doing some research into the sectors and roles that you want to apply for in the future and making a really specific tailored skills audit to those roles in particular. So what skills are employers looking for generally? So these are a list of skills that get you a job when you graduate according to target jobs. So when I talked about producing an undergraduate level CV and having a graduate skill set, it's having these kind of skills. So commercial awareness, communication skills, teamwork, negotiation and persuasion, problem solving, leadership, organizational skills, perseverance and motivation, working under pressure, and being confident. How confident are you that you have all of these skills? Can you clearly explain why and why not you don't have those skills. So what you're aiming for as part of any work experience, but year in industry included, is how you can develop these skills in particular. What I'd like you to do is take this time, take 10 to 15 minutes to complete the skills audit form that will be supplied as part of this video. Take special care of, and attention to look at the page. As you can see, it's sorted into a traffic light system, so red, amber and green. If you, for example, look at a particular skill on that form and you identify that you can do that skill with your eyes closed, you might mark it with green and give an example in the box below of how you can demonstrate that skill in particular. If you're looking at one of the skills and you think, I've got some experience of that, but could do with more evidence or better examples or more up-to-date examples, mark it as an amber. And if you're looking at some of these skills and thinking, I haven't got that, or this is an area that I need to develop, mark it as red. So I'll give you 10 to 15 minutes now. Do pause the video and complete your skills audit. So hopefully now we've completed our skills audit. So what do we do now? Well, we use our skills audit to identify the skills that we currently have, aka the skills you've identified as green within your skills audit. So we can incorporate those within your CV. Now, the skills that you identified as amber or as red, and perhaps some gaps in your current knowledge, year in industry is a good opportunity for you to develop those skills further. So at the moment, we're going to park the ambers and the reds, but we'll come back to those in future sessions and towards the end of this session. But for the moment, let's concentrate on our greens, so the skills we've got at the moment, and whether our CVs currently demonstrate that we have these skills in particular. When was the last time you looked or edited your CV? It might be you've got a CV from sixth form, it might be from part-time jobs that you've applied for before, but what we're aiming for is an undergraduate level CV. So what do one of those look like? Well, let's look on the next slide. So this is a chronological CV. Now this is quite small, so I don't expect you to see the writing that's on there, and I will provide you with larger PDF copies of these CVs. But ultimately, if you've got lots of work experience or lots of work experience in a particular area relevant to the roles that you're applying for, chronological CVs could be the good fit for you. So as you can see, really clear and easy to read it would be if it was normal size, but nicely spread on the page. Lots of white space around. But the way it's sort of formatted on the page looks really pleasing. It starts with the personal details, followed by education. So this person has started with the masters that they've undertaken and the dissertation title because it's relevant to the role that she's applying for. She's then put her degree and she's bullet pointed some relevant modules to the roles that she's applying for and include some grades as a percentage to indicate how well she did those particular modules. She then goes back to A levels and then to GCSEs. So she's working reverse chronologically, starting with the most recent and working backwards in time. And as you can see, when she gets down to A levels and GCSEs, it's much less. It's a much smaller section because we can literally top level 11 GCSEs, grade A to C, including, and then 3 or 4 are the most relevant. So again, really brief and to the point. She split her experience into relevant experience and other experience. So all her relevant experience related to the role that she's applying for is in the first section and is at the bottom of the first page. And then she goes on to have the other experience on the second page. She's bullet pointed, makes it really easy to read. And she's concentrated within each bullet point on a particular skill or skills that she developed as part of that role. She then goes on to awards and achievements, finally hobbies and interests, and a references section as well. So this is just a general overview of what a chronological CV is, but do look at the PDF for more details. Next is a skills based. So if you're worried that you don't have too much experience or you haven't got much experience in the area that you're applying for, a skills based CV could be a good option for you. The main difference between a skills-based and a chronological CV is where a chronological CV focuses on where you've worked. A skills-based CV, as the name would suggest, focuses on the skills that you would have developed as part of any work experience that you've got, but also from academia, from group work that you've done from college, from volunteering, from some internships that you've done, so can draw from lots of different experiences. So, for example, in this case, instead of a work experience section at the bottom of her first page, Alexandra has basically identified the key skills that are required for the roles that she's intending to apply for in the future, and then has given 2 or 3 bullet points under each key skill to evidence how she developed that skill with other unrelated or not 100% relevant examples. So, for example, she's talked about a part-time job that she's had, and then she goes on to talk about an academic example as well. So, the overall format of a skills-based CV is really, really flexible, and it allows you to basically use the experience that you have from all aspects of your life, both working and non-working, and use it to evidence that you've got the skills required for the role that you are applying for. So, with whichever CV example that you choose, there are 6 stages of preparation that you should undertake when looking at your CV. So that's timing, research, tailoring, phrasing, evidence, and checking. Now, if we start with time first, what would you suggest is the minimum amount of time to give yourself? Some people say, for example, an hour, 2 hours. Some people may say 3 hours or 4 hours. I'd say much longer than that. I'd factor in some time to walk away after you've written the first draft of your CV, and to come back again and take a second look with a fresh pair of eyes. So I might say at least a week, not of solid working, but to write the first draft of your CV. Maybe that might take you an hour or 2 hours. Then go away for a day or two. Then come back and check it again and add to it and build upon it again. With a fresh pair of eyes, you might change your mind or think, actually, I need to reword that little bit. So take your time and don't forget to check your applications thoroughly. What key elements are there you need to consider? Well, also about timescales and deadlines. So, for example, if you need to get your CV in at a certain deadline, we might not have a week, or we might not have a couple of days to do this. To making sure you're investing enough time to make sure you've checked your CV and your applications thoroughly. The second element is the research element. So, what I like to call the company research quiz. Basically, when you're sitting in an interview or you're writing as part of your application what you like about the organization or what the organization does or what is needed for that role, how do you do that? How do you communicate that? So it's thinking about researching the organization, thinking about how do you prove you're right for a role. So again, look at the person specification as we've mentioned. And then finally, where can you find the information that you need? Well, on the company's website, you could look on LinkedIn, you could look on prospects, as we've mentioned, for skills that are required for a role. You could look at sort of professional bodies' websites for particular roles. So the CIM, for example, you can look on their website for marketing in terms of what skills are required or what's going on in the marketing realm, and how you can use that to differentiate your applications from others, and how you can prove that you're right for this particular role. The next one is tailoring. Tailoring is really important. Tailoring is about making your CV or your application really specific to the organization or the role that you're applying for. On average, research suggests there are at least 39 graduates applying for each job that exists. Now, as you can imagine, that is an average, so that varies. So there are 600 applicants per BBC post. I think there are in excess of 1,000 for each L'Oreal post, for example. But if you're applying for Fishing and Farming magazine based in York, you might only have to compete against 7 people. So again, think about the other people that you're competing against, and you're trying to produce a high quality application that will stand you in good stead against them. But also think about what you're doing to stand out. What are you doing to differentiate yourself from others? Think about the skills and the strengths that we talked about earlier and other things that you can offer that can set yourself apart from the rest. And as we've said in terms of tailoring, make sure that this is really relevant towards the company or the role that you're applying for. Phrasing is also really important. So when students apply for, let's say, a student ambassador role at York St John, one of the reasons they say they should be shortlisted or be given the job is they say, I want to be a student ambassador at York St John because it will be flexible around my studies. Well, that's all well and good, but in terms of the people reviewing the application, what else could you say about why you want to be a student ambassador, or why you should be selected? Is it the values of the organisation of York St John in general? Is it the skills that you would like to develop as part of that role? Is it the skills that you've got to offer as part of that role? So think about what you can say in terms of your application, how you can phrase that. Don't just think about yourself as the applicant, but think about this from the employer's point of view as well. What do they want to hear? Or how can you use these details and this information to differentiate yourself from other candidates? So one thing I would suggest in terms of values and ethics is do loads of research on the organisation that you're applying for and be really specific and authentic within your application and the reasons why you want to secure that role. The next activity I'd like you to do is all about evidencing. So everything that we say we can do in terms of our skills and experience, we must be able to evidence. So what I'd like you to do in the next 10 minutes is think about your previous experiences. So that could be paid work, unpaid work, volunteering, involvement within groups or societies, being part of sports teams, or any academic involvement as part of a module. And make a list of as many experiences that you can think of that you have. Now, once you've written that list, I'd like you to focus on each experience in turn and consider what skills that you've demonstrated with each of those experiences. Okay, so for example, if you write down, let's say, work on an academic module as part of a team, so a group work, you could put teamwork or the ability to challenge or to persuade, because anybody who's worked in a part of a team or a group for anything that they've worked on will know we don't all have the same ideas. So if you think that your idea is the most effective, you're going to have to talk around the other people in your group for them to join your thought process and for them to invest in your idea. So it's things like persuasion will be really important. So what I'd like to do, as I've said, is make a list of your experiences and then look at each one and think about what skills you can demonstrate with each. I'll give you 10 minutes to do that. Please feel free to pause the video. Now, when you've mapped out your experience, you should have a list of experience that you have and the skills that you have utilized as part of that experience. It's really important that we're able to articulate the skills within that experience. So one way we can do that is by using the STAR technique. Now, STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. So what this does, it firstly keeps us on track and gives us a model to stick to when we're talking through our experience, but it also ensures that we're talking about the right things in the right order. So first, for example, when you're writing your CV or you're in a job interview, you'd expect to give some information about the situation you're in. And this provides context and background. So our customers complained, dot, dot, dot. This is the situation that you were in, okay? The next is task. So describe the problem and challenges that you faced or what required the skills that you're talking about in the first place. So we face supply chain shortage, dot, dot, dot. That was the task that was ahead of you. A is for action. So explain what you did. This should form the basis of your answer. So 60% of your answer should be about your action because that's what you did and how. So this particular example says we solved or I calculated. I'd sort of refute this a little bit and say focus on your own contribution to the example. It's no use saying we did this and we did that because that's I'm imagining 7 people opposed to just you having this skill. So again, think about what your contribution was in particular. And finally, results. So state the benefits, the savings, reward, the recognitions that you had, the impact of your work. What happened in the end, and how did you know you were successful? The next stage is check-in. So you must check your work. So think about who can proofread for you. Well, we can. So you can submit your CVs to careers@yorksj.ac.uk and we'll do a check for you. You can also speak to Fran or myself and we can do a quick CV check for you. Or also speak to people in your household or your friends as well to get an extra sort of pair of eyes on your application. But I'd say as a minimum, make sure you check your CV and make sure it's been checked by placements officer or a member of the careers team. And again, think about your checking style. So how do you do it? Do you do it all in one go? Do you do it in chunks? Do you maybe go through it once quickly and then go through it a second time more slowly? Think about how you check and make sure you're not missing spelling, punctuation, and grammar. And anything that you could change or improve on. And like I say, make sure you factor in the extra time to come back to your presentation. Beg your pardon, come back to your the presentation of your CV and make sure that you've given sufficient time to come back with a fresh pair of eyes and a new perspective. So remember, these are the 6 stages of preparation, and this is the challenge that I'm going to set you over the summer. So what I'd like you to do is think about your CV and think about how you can go through these 6 stages of preparation to get your CV tip-top and ready for applying for opportunities from September, October of this year, because that's when a lot of the larger opportunities with larger employers are released. So think about timing, research, tailoring, phrasing, evidence, and check-in. And don't forget to sort of make sure you do all of those 6. So what's next? What can you use this time for? Well, over the summer and within the next few weeks and months, what I'd like you to do is reflect on what you'd like to gain from your placement year in particular, and make sure you make note of this because this will be really useful in our meetings next year. Investigate some of this or last year's opportunities through the websites we discussed earlier. Reflect on the skills audit you've completed, and again think about your reds and your ambers and your greens as well, and how you can develop all of these. And think about how you can align these skills with the experience that you mapped out earlier. So even like you say, when you've made the list of the experience that you've got and you thought about the skills that you could utilize, think about going back to your skills audit and picking out some of those skills and adding them to your list of mapped out experiences and skills. Create a first draft of your CV and have it checked by a member of the team. So we work all through the summer, so there's no reason why you can't, if you've got some spare time, work on your CV and send it through, because we are here and available to check your CV for you. And consider gaining some work experience this summer. So when we chat at the start of your second year, we'll probably be talking about what work experience you've got. So use this as an opportunity to look at your skills audit and use your summer to gain some work experience that might be able to help you to fill some of those gaps or develop your current skill set from your skills audit. Finally, if you've got any questions, you can contact Fran Pluter, the placements officer at placementyear@yorksj.ac.uk. You can contact me or remember the LaunchPad careers team at careers@yorksj.ac.uk. And remember, this is the email address you'd send any sort of CVs or applications for checking to. And then finally, if you'd like an appointment, either come in and see us in person next academic year, or you would like to have a telephone or video appointment over the summer, you can book an appointment via LaunchPad online at the following URL link. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you found it useful, and I'm really looking forward to working with you next year.